Sun salutations are a series of poses connected by powerful breath and designed to warm up the body from head to toe. As you advance, the series can also include aerobic components, making sun salutations a challenging workout on their own. Today we're going to teach you 2 essential building blocks that make the sequence flow. Then we'll teach you 4 versions of Sun Salutation A, each a bit more advanced than the last, so you have the opportunity to grow your practice. Tabletop is a pose that doesn't get a lot of credit in yoga, and yet it can serve as the home base for almost everything else you do. It's a place where you can spend time to ensure that you are properly aligned, hands and feet, arms and legs, before you move into any other pose. So we really advise spending a little bit of time finding your tabletop position, getting very grounded and connected to it so that you can come back to it easily. The most important components of tabletop are the structure of wrists below shoulders and knees below hips. So as you can see here with Jace on his mat in tabletop, he's got his wrists directly below his shoulders. His crown of the head is reaching way out toward the front of the room, making his spine nice and long, and then his knees come directly below his hips. From here, he can take cat-cow, he can take bird dog, he can take any number of postures, and we're going to get to the next one in just a moment, downward facing dog. And this pose serves as the place to start from and come back to. Okay, downward facing dog is the pose that everybody has heard of and very few people know how to do well, or even how to do it all. Because it's a pose that we have a vision of from various pictures that we've seen or people we've seen in the front of a room. And so we try to emulate that. And then we discover that we have tight hamstrings and tight shoulders, and it gets very difficult to get in that position and create the version of it that we think we should do. So we have come to downward facing dog from a different direction, namely from tabletop. Tabletop, we just talked about a minute ago, it's the home base for everything we do. So once you get this structure set up, knees right below hips, wrists right below shoulders, now we're set up perfectly for downward facing dog. So what you're going to do from here is tuck your toes, and then you're going to send your hips back towards your heels. This is counterintuitive to the way this pose is often taught. Generally we hear downward dog taught as lift your hips up and then go back. But in fact, what we want to do is create a lot of length in the upper body, and we want to begin to connect the belly to the thighs. To do that, we send the hips back first, and then up. So now as Jace brings his hips up, he's going to stop at the point where his hamstrings become too tight for him to straighten any further. There is no need for his heels to touch the ground. There is no need for his legs to straighten. There is a need for his body to remain nice and long, for his weight to remain back in his hips and legs, for all the strength and the work to happen in the quads and legs. And then over time, as he warms up, as his hamstrings lengthen out, his legs will begin to straighten and his heels will come closer to the floor. Now, a great exercise you can do to practice this is to use tabletop and downward facing dog together. So from down dog, he'll bring his hips down toward his heels first. So come back up if you would. Yep, there you go. So hips will come down to heels first. Then knees will touch down. And he'll come forward to tabletop. That's an inhale. As he exhales, he'll send hips back and then up to downward facing dog. Right? Inhale, hips come down. Knees come down. Chest comes forward. Tabletop. Yep, exhale, hips come back, and then you press up. Do you notice the work in the quads? Mm-hmm. This is a quad burner, and it's great for you. And you begin to build the strength and the length in the upper body as well as the legs and the hamstrings. Okay, so now we're going to walk you through 4 versions of Sun Salutation A. This sequence has 5 poses in it, and it's connected by breath. And to get to the place where you have this sensation of flow, where you really feel like you're not worrying about where to go next, about where to place your hands, you want to really hone in on each of the poses, and you want to know how to get from one to the other. And we're going to show you a few versions, 4 exactly, that will start at a easiest version all the way up to the most challenging. And as you grow in your practice, you'll be able to advance with the sequence. So the first pose in Sun Salutation A is upward salute. So Jason's going to lift his arms up overhead, and instead of bringing his biceps by his ears, he's actually going to turn his chin up to the ceiling and shrug his shoulders forward and create a little bit of back bend in the upper back. This creates stretch in the shoulders, length in the core, gets you some stretch there as well, as opposed to just a kind of flopping of the arms up and down. So now we have this big inhale, length, stretch, reach. From here, second pose is forward fold. To get to forward fold, this is really critical. Forward fold is a pose, yeah, you can make your way down, that we tend to do, unfortunately, wrongly, because we are struggling with tight hamstrings. And people come to forward fold, think that they have to have their legs straight, and when they do that, Jace, would you do that? Straighten your legs and then see what happens to his back. Because his hamstrings aren't yet loose enough for his chest to touch his thighs, he begins to take all this weight and strain into his back. So we avoid that by bending the knees and connecting the belly to the thighs, from belly all the way up to chest. I don't care if you need to squat all the way down to the mat in order to get this connection. That is so much more valuable in building hamstring length and removing strain in the back, yeah? So from here, he's going to inhale, and to do that, he's going to press his hands down into the mat and lengthen out his spine. This is sometimes referred to as halfway lift. In fact, we're not doing a halfway lift. All we're doing is inhaling and pressing away the mat. Now, if for you this pose is challenging because your hamstrings, shoulders, hips, whatever, you can put blocks underneath your hands. You can lift up into your fingertips, if that makes sense. The goal, however, is to get the hands to the mat. Why? Because we're headed to the next pose. The next pose is the first version of this Sun Salutation A. Normally, ultimately rather, we will go to a push-up. But until we build push-up strength, we're going to step back into our favorite pose, tabletop. So we step back, bring the knees down, stack shoulders over wrists, hips right over knees, and from here, we inhale again. So we'll inhale and take cow pose, lowering the belly, lifting the chin. While others are doing upward facing dog, cow pose is the alternative for people who are not doing a push-up. From here, we'll tuck the toes, send the hips back, and make our way to downward facing dog in that way that we have been learning. That's the final pose. And that's version A. Let's do this version one more time, breath to movement, yeah? Make your way to the top of the mat. In Tadasana, mountain pose. From here, he'll inhale, arms overhead, into upward salute. As he exhales, he'll sit down, bring his hands through his heart, lay his belly down on his thighs, and touch down to the mat, or maybe to blocks. From here, he'll inhale, pressing the mat away, lengthening out his spine, and then exhale, bring his knees to the mat to tabletop position. Then inhale, upward facing, or Minnie doing upward, he's doing cow, yeah? And exhale, tuck toes, hips back and down, downward facing. Now, it's important to know how to get back to the top of your mat from here to keep this sequence going. First, we take an inhale, gaze goes towards your hands. As you exhale, you might bend your knees a little more potentially, and then you can step, long big stride, multiple steps, or when you're ready, jump to the top of the mat. We finish this sequence by taking an actual halfway lift, lengthening out the spine to halfway. You might bring your hands off the mat at this point, and then exhale, forward fold again. That's the completion of that sequence. So now we're going to do the second version of Sun Salutation A. This one is with a modified push-up and perfect for people who are not quite ready for a full push-up, but ready to move past version A, which involves tabletop position and took the push-up out altogether. So we'll do one version slow and then one a little faster. Inhale, arms overhead to the first pose, which is upward salute. From here, we sit down, pull the hands through the heart, lay the belly down on the thighs in order to connect belly to thighs. Hands plant on the mat. Inhale from here to lengthen out the spine, pressing the mat away, bringing weight forward into your hands. As you exhale, step back. This time we step into a high plank. Not to tabletop, but all the way back to high plank. High plank stacks shoulders over wrists, body nice and long, heels up over toes, crown of head reaching out to the front of the room. You want a line as long as you can create from heel all the way to crown of head. Now, we're going to modify this push-up by lowering the knees. Notice when Jace lowers his knees, he doesn't come into tabletop. His hips do not go back. In fact, they stay forward, and he creates a line from knee through hip to shoulder to crown of head. From here, he'll take a push-up, which is a yoga version where the elbows shoot back, and we create this 90-degree bend at the elbow and a nice long line. From here, upward facing dog. Shoelaces pressed down, presses into the hands and brings his chest forward and up. Thighs are off the mat. Now we make our way to downward facing dog. We're going to do that by bringing knees down and then resetting to tabletop. So it might take you just a little bit of movement of your knees to bring them back in line with your hips. What I don't want you to do is have your knees way back, which will result in a big spread out downward facing dog. Here, the knees come back in, then hips go back and up to downward facing dog. Nice long back, knees bent in order to allow hamstrings to stretch. Inhale, gaze to thumbs. Exhale, bend your knees, step to the top of your mat. Finish the sequence by lengthening your spine with an inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold the body down. Each of the folds gives you the chance to increase your hamstring length, right? So now let's do the whole sequence, breath to movement. Inhale, rise up to upward salute, shrug shoulders forward. Exhale, sit down, roll down, belly to thighs, hands plant. Inhale, press into the mat, weight comes forward, lengthening out your spine. Exhale, step back into high plank, and then immediate lower knees, then shoot elbows back and hover halfway down. Inhale, press shoelaces, come through and up to upward facing dog, yes. And then knees lower, toes tuck, hips go back and up, downward facing. Notice the smooth transition from pose to pose. Inhale, gaze to thumbs. Exhale, bend your knees, step or jump to the top of your mat. Finish with a halfway lift, inhale, and exhale, fold down. Beautiful job. Now we're going to look at the third version, which is getting us much closer to Sun Salutations that many people might be familiar with. A full push-up, and then what we call a pike is you go up and back to downward facing dog. I'm going to show you what that looks like. This requires a lot of core strength as well as upper body strength, and you want to build it by doing the other two versions of Sun Salutation before you get to this one. So here we go. One pose at a time, and then we'll do it breath to movement. So you'll inhale, arms overhead, up to upward salute. Then you'll sit down and pull your hands through your heart, rolling your belly down and laying it on your thighs. Hands plant on the mat. Inhale to lengthen your spine and press the mat away. And from here, your exhale, stepping back into high plank. Now this is not the pose. The pose is chaturanga, which is the push-up. So to get to that pose, you'll hinge forward so the shoulders come in front of wrists, and then hover halfway down, elbows tight by your sides. Do not allow your shoulders to go below your elbows. From here, push from your toes, shooting the body forward and up into upward facing dog. Thighs are off the mat. And then this is where we pull from the core, pike up, bringing the toes in so that we can get into our downward facing dog, the version that gives you a nice long spine, knees bent, hamstrings, opportunity to open, and heels off the mat. Yeah? So let's do this breath with movement. Inhale, gaze to thumbs as you finish this sequence. Exhale, bend your knees. Maybe you're ready to jump forward. That's possible if you want to do that next round. Inhale, lengthen out your spine, and exhale, forward fold. Breathe in, rise up to upward salute. Breathe out as you exhale, fold down, belly to thighs, hands plant. Inhale, press into the mat, lengthening out your spine. Exhale, step back, high plank, and hover, shifting forward, halfway down. Inhale, forward and up, upward facing, onto the tops of your feet. Exhale, pulling from the core, rolling over your toes, downward facing, knees bent, spine long. Inhale, gaze forward to the front of your mat. Exhale, crouch down, step or maybe jump to the top of your mat. Inhale, finish with a lengthening of the spine. Exhale, forward fold. Beautiful. Really nice. Okay, this is the fun one. Final version, Sun Salutation A, which is a jump straight into chaturanga, into the push-up. Now this requires a lot of upper body strength and core strength, things that you can develop using some other practices that you can look at as well, which we'll teach you over time. We'll show you how it looks today, and you're welcome to give it a try. So we start moving into upward salute, With the inhale, exhale, pulling hands through heart, rolling down to forward fold. Here's where it gets fun. Inhale, we press the mat away, lengthening out the spine, bringing weight forward. This is what allows him to bring his feet off the mat and shoot them back, and then drop into chaturanga. From here, pushes forward and up into upward facing inhale. Exhale, pull from the core to downward facing knees bend. Inhale, gaze forward to the front of your mat. Exhale, crouch down, step or jump here to the top. Inhale, lengthen out your spine. Exhale, forward fold. So you can begin to see, let's keep moving, how this becomes a very aerobic practice, right? You don't need to speed up. You can still take 3 or 4 count inhales and exhales, and you move from pose to pose, breathing and flowing, really firing up the aerobic experience as well as the strength building. Nice job.